This will sound very strange, but the creator of the zombie movie that started the modern genre of zombie movies, George Romero, and his Night of the Living Dead movie, and the zombie-like crashing of the security barrier at the Capitol building on the 6th day of the first month in 2021, and the death of the player involved in the most famous catch in football history, nicknamed the Immaculate Reception, Franco Harris, and the Revelation chapter 12 sign that was fulfilled in the night sky on September 23, 2017, that depicted a birth and was symbolism for the rescue of God's faithful from the persecution from the Antichrist, is part of a prophecy from the Christian God of the Bible that is predicting that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash on December 24th, 2024, and that there will be a zombie pandemic, a mass demonic possession that will begin on June 9th, 2025. The date that this video was posted proves that these predictions are being made ahead of time, as does this time-stamped email and forensic notes PDF document. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. Alright, welcome to this epic, most amazing, extremely important video. What I have to say is that this video, the information in this video will build on itself and climax into a dramatic climax at the end. But do not skip ahead to the end. Watch all of the video and make sure that you watch it all the way to the end. Alright, this diagram here is amazing and very important. In this video, I will establish how God's big picture of signs are pointing to how, in other words, predicting that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash on October 17th, 2023, and that the historic barge that has been stuck on the rocks of the Niagara River since 1918 will crash over the falls on precisely February 17th, 2024, and there will be a zombie pandemic that will begin somehow, in some way, whether literally or symbolically or something, but something will begin regarding the zombie pandemic on this date right here, April 20th, 2024. It will be a mass demonic possession. God has been using many signs regarding zombies to point to the coming zombie pandemic. And this is the case with this video here. And when the prediction comes to pass in a few days, it will prove what I am saying about the future zombie pandemic and mass demonic possession next year. Alright, this video is now being recorded on March 9th, and it is being recorded, this segment, what I'm saying right now is being recorded before April 20th, but at this time I have my doubts as to whether this will be the date of the beginning of the zombie pandemic and mass demonic possession, and instead will be a step in the trail of signs. And this is how it works. You will get the idea if this is your first video on this channel. This is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, which is only being explained on this channel. It is a big picture of signs, and they are trails of signs, and God is most definitely pointing to April 20th regarding the coming mass demonic possession and zombie pandemic. If April 20th is only a step, in other words, if this isn't the date, it will be a step, which means that there will be a relevant prophetic sign related to this that will occur on this date that will provide us more information for the big picture. And so stay tuned if my suspicion is correct and that this is only a step. However, that said, this diagram is 100% correct, and that'll be proven when the prediction comes to pass. Anyway, I have more to say in just a second here regarding this step right here, which was October 17th, regarding Harris's plane crash. This was a step. She is now predicted to die in a plane crash on March 19th, as I will now explain. But that is in itself another example of how God's big picture of signs works. It works on steps in trails of signs. But again, stay tuned. After April 20th, I will make a video explaining what happened on April 20th, if it is indeed, like I think it is, a step in the trail. All right, as you just heard, I was saying before April 20th that it would likely be a step, but I was highly confident that it would be a step. And now it is after April 20th. Today is May 13th, and April 20th was indeed, like it was believed to be, a step. We had the prophetic sign on that date that completely confirmed the analysis. God is using Japan, signs, incidents, things involving Japan, for three main reasons. One, it is the land of the rising sun, and it has a sun on its flag. And so God is using Japan signs in his big picture of signs to point to the coming solar flare, the catastrophic coronal mass ejection that will knock out America's power grid. 2, Japan symbolizes nuclear bombs. 3, Japan is known for Japanese animation, Japanime, if you will. And Japan anime is obsessed with demonic possession. It took a while to figure this out, that God was using this in his signs for this purpose. And that indeed was the sign we received. We received a very relevant Japan sign on April 20th. And like in many instances in God's signs, the themes overlap. This was also a date in the trail of signs that is leading to Kamala Harris's plane crash, which is why through the Japan sign, God combined these two themes. It was the day of two military helicopters, Japanese military helicopters, that collided and crashed. This was an aviation sign. The model number of the aviation helicopters was, I think, SH-60. And 60 hints at 2 times 30, which hints at 23, a number that God uses in his signs for the Antichrist, the basketball president who wore jersey number 23 in high school. But to confirm his signs, as I've explained many times, he pairs this 23 number with another number such as 44 to confirm that it is relevant. And that's why God is using in his signs helicopters for symbolism for the mark of the Antichrist, because helicopter blades are in the shape of an X, and the X is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. In Paleo Ancient Hebrew, the Tav mark, which would have been the inverse of the mark of the Antichrist described in Ezekiel chapter 9, it was an X. And there's so many things to say about the letter X, I won't even start here. But I will say that God is using helicopter signs to point to the X of the helicopter blades as symbolism for the mark of the Antichrist. And it is the mark of the Antichrist that will result in demonic possession. And that is what we are talking about in this video, and what we were talking about in advance of this date, April 20th. And so we had these two helicopters with these two X's hinting at the mark of the Antichrist, which will induce demonic possession. And it's Japan. which is, as I just explained, is symbolic or hints at Japanese anime, which is obsessed with demonic possession. Spirits possessing souls, the use of spirits to fight battles, etc. It's completely obsessed with this concept. And so that's why God is using it, this the Japan signs, okay? So also, the two blades have 4 points on them each. And so 2 helicopter blades gives us 4 and 4, which hints at 44. And as I just mentioned a minute ago, God pairs the 44 and 23 together to confirm the sign. And so in the helicopter sign, we have a 44 and a 23, as I just explained. All right. Also, the date itself, by the way, 420 hints at 2 4s, and that's what we got, the 2 helicopters with the 4 points on their blades. Now, much more regarding this is explained in the There Are No Words to Describe How Important It Is video, which is the O.J. Simpson video. That'll explain more. You need to watch that video. And that'll explain also how the trail of signs from April 20th leads to May 19th, the date it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash. And by the way, she will crash in St. Louis because it will be pointing to the X that was engendered by the paths of the 2 eclipses over America. And that date in turn connects to the date it is now believed with high level of confidence. It is amazing beyond words, the connections that confirm this. To July 27th, the date of the beginning of the mass demonic possession and zombie pandemic. I am not saying that everyone is going to turn into a zombie on that day. I do not know. But I do know that there will be some sort of symbolic beginning to this. Whether it be the day that the aliens show up and announce to the world through the Pope or something. I don't know, but you will recognize that it will be a symbolic beginning to something related to this, demonic possession. You might not recognize it right away. It might take 2 weeks, and then you'll go, oh, that was the beginning, July 27th, when that such and such happened. And I'm saying that because I know from experience now how this works. Okay. God's big picture of signs, that is, which is only being explained on this channel. This is how it works. There will be some kind of symbolic beginning, some event, maybe even some demonic possession. I don't know. But probably not. But probably it will most importantly be related to it. It may take, in other words, it may take some time for everyone that's going to be possessed to become possessed. But there will be a symbolic beginning to it. On July 27th, 2024, you will recognize it when it happens. All right, this segment of this video I'm now recording on November 20th. July 27th was recognized in advance that it would only be a step. So what you just heard was recorded in sometime in May, and prior to July 27th, it was recognized that it would only be a step. And it was an amazing step, as was expected. We received the relevant prophetic signs that confirmed all of the analysis. I've explained it numerous times in other videos, but I'll just quickly say a couple of things here because that's the theme of this video, so it should be said, explained a little bit. On that day, Kamala Harris visited Pittsfield, and if I recall, it was her first campaign stop. She had already planned to make a stop there for the Biden campaign, and I believe it was her first stop as the vice presidential nominee, which makes it even more symbolic, come to think of it. But anyway, it was Pittsfield, Massachusetts. She held a rally there, and there's lots to it, which is explained in another video. But one of the things was James Taylor, a very important person in God's big picture of signs that he has used in other instances, including the song he sang at the beginning of the broadcast of the Game 3 of the 1989 World Series when the earthquake struck. Anyway, James Taylor had only one #1 hit that he wrote himself, He had two number one hits. One he wrote himself, which was Fire and Rain. And in the song, he speaks of his former band named The Flying Machine being broken in pieces on the ground. Kamala Harris's plane will crash in a fiery crash. Probably there will be rain, and her plane will be in pieces on the ground. Now, it's Pittsfield, and that's why this is relevant to this theme of this coming mass demonic possession, because it's an allusion or pointing to the bottomless pit from which the demons will rise, as described in Revelation chapter 9. And speaking of, so that's why Pittsfield, Massachusetts. Now, on the same day, in New England, which is where Pittsfield, Massachusetts is, we had another amazing prophetic sign, which was this massive swarm of dragonflies that invaded a very crowded beach on a Saturday. I believe it was a Saturday. The beach was crowded, and this was in Rhode Island, and this massive swarm of dragonflies came from the ocean somewhere. How the dragonflies came from the ocean is a mystery, but it isn't, because it's from God, and it's an allusion to Bible prophecy, the beast rising from the sea, for example. But they came in and swarmed through the crowd on the beach. Video of it went viral. This very strange event. But this is all pointing to these dragonflies. This invasion of the dragonflies onto land is pointing to Revelation chapter 12, where it is described that the dragon is thrown from heaven to earth. But also in Bible prophecy, the Antichrist and beast is said to rise from the sea, and that's also what the dragon is symbolic of. Okay, so that's amazing, and that was also one of the signs we expected. Now, how all of this fits, there's much more to it. It was the 13th state. The beast that rises from the sea is described in Revelation chapter 13. And, all right, so, okay, so that was that. Now, July 27th, in turn, connects into the Trail of Signs. But let's go back to this date in this diagram. We're talking about this April 20th date, which was also recognized in advance before the day came and went, that it would only be a step. All right, this is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, which is only being explained on this channel. The full intended meaning of any of God's prophetic signs cannot be properly understood without their context and connections to the other prophetic signs, which is what is missed by the vast majority of people that analyze God's signs, and that's why the vast majority of the prophetic signs are missed in general, including the ones that I've been mentioning here, including this one that happened on this day, which was this helicopter collision, two helicopters that collided that were Japanese helicopters. Now, there's so much more to this. This was actually 4 times 4 days. First of all, there was 4 plus 4 deaths. God is using, again, helicopter blades for symbolism for the mark of the Antichrist, but helicopter blades have 4 points. There was 2 of them, giving us the 4 and 4. It was 4 times 4 days after Alaska Airlines announced that Boeing had given them 4 times $4 million. And that day was the date 4/4, and that day was exactly 4,444 days after the beginning first day of the 444-day Iran hostage crisis, and on, as I explain in other videos. And by the way, that hostage crisis led to Operation Eagle Claw, the attempt to rescue them, which was aborted after the failure of the helicopters, including a helicopter crash that killed 4 plus 4 people, just like the Japanese helicopter crash. And by the way, both of those crashes, the helicopters of the Japanese in 4/20/2024 and back in 1980, were at night. And also there were 4 people injured in the Operation Eagle Claw disaster. Okay, so back to this 4/20 date though. Again, the helicopters were 60s, which hints at 2 times 30 and the number 23. And here in this diagram, we have this 2 months and 3 days, but also 9 weeks connection. And God, to confirm his big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, uses second and third witnesses to confirm a matter, as the Bible says is required. And this is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic signs. And if we think about it, one simple way in which God would provide a second witness for us is through pairing certain numbers together, such as 9 and 23. And I know this because I have been studying his big picture of signs from morning till night for more than full-time hours for 7 years. And the reason for 9 and 23, 2 main reasons. One, the Antichrist was inaugurated in 2009, and he is the basketball president who wore 23 in high school. Also, the inverse of the mark of the Antichrist is described in Ezekiel chapter 9, and the mark of the Antichrist changes a person's chromosomes. And there are 23 pairs of chromosomes. Okay, and so that's why we have this connection from this. Now, this video, I assume, will explain what happened on this date, because this was also a step in the trail of signs for this particular event, but this was the day of a solar flare, and this was also the Japanese sign, which is, like I just mentioned earlier, Japan and God's sign is symbolism for the land of the rising sun and the coming solar flare. We had the sun sign on this day. I explain it in other videos if I don't explain it in this video, but I assume that I do later. Okay, now, as I said, God pairs 23 and 44 together. We have on this day the 23 and the 44, with the helicopter being the SH-60, which hints at 2 times 30 and 23, and the 4 plus 4 deaths and the 4 points of a helicopter blade, which is symbolic of the mark, the X. And which is also, by the way, symbolic of chromosomes. I'm pretty sure I would have mentioned that earlier. Okay, now this day is 23 times 23 days, exactly, 23 squared, to Mass Demonic Day. Mass Demonic Possession Day, Revelation 9:11 Day, 7 Thunders Day, 5th Trumpet Day, 5G Day, whatever you want to call it, aliens pretending to be demons, demons pretending to be aliens Day. There'll be a symbolic beginning, in other words, of the demonic realm colliding with the earthly realm on June 9th, 2025, the day after the rapture, on the true Pentecost on the Sunday, on the 8th of June. So June 9th. Now, June 9th is 6-9, which hints at 2-3. Because the ratio fraction 6-9 can be reduced to 2-3. Both 6 divided by 9 and 2 divided by 3 equal 0.666, the number of the Antichrist in Bible prophecy. But here we have a connection here of 23 times 23 days, which pairs with the SH-60 helicopter and the 4 plus 4 deaths. The 23 pairs with 44 on the 23 here. 23 times 23 days. But the reason why 23 times 23 days is relevant, extremely relevant in this context, is that it hints at 23 pairs. It's 23 squared, and this hints at 23 pairs of chromosomes. And we are talking about this helicopter crash, which, as I said, God is using, and it was known long before this date and this sign that God is using this for this purpose. The helicopters are symbolism for the X and the mark of the Antichrist that changes a person's chromosomes. And by the way, also, God is using helicopters for symbolism for dragons with their tails. And this connected to the dragonfly sign on July 27th, as I mentioned. That's also astounding as well. The dragonfly sign connected to this helicopter crash sign. Okay, so that's amazing. That's amazing beyond words. Yeah, even the date 6-9 that it's leading to, this 23 times 23 days is leading to the date 6-9, and again, that can be reduced to the fraction 2-3. So it's clearly, it's all amazing. And again, Japanese animation, God has confirmed this through other connections and stories that he told through, for example, the most famous Japanese animation movie of all time, Akira. I don't have time to get into it all. Hopefully I'll have time between now and June 9th to make more videos regarding the proof for how God has shown that Japan signs are symbolism for Japanese animation, which is obsessed with this theme of spiritual possession. But even the culture at large, which is largely influenced by Japanese animation, is obsessed with these, for example, nonsensical, cute characters, which are all symbolism for demons. If you go to Japan, you'll be bombarded with pictures and things related to these nonsensical characters, which, with the proper eyes to see, represent demons. So, okay, I think I've explained enough here. This trail, speaking of the number 23, goes on to one of the steps in the trail of science for Kamala Harris's plane crash was the date 2-3. But I explained that in a second. So, all right, now all that I've explained so far is merely an introduction. This doesn't even get into the amazing story that God has told through the rest of this diagram. And it is extremely important and amazing. Make sure you watch all of this video. But let me just say this. If God were to simply tap someone on the shoulder and say such and such is going to happen on such and such date, it would essentially give us nothing, except to maybe prove that there is a God. But it is through these interconnected signs that God develops these trails of signs, and it is through this that God is able to tell these stories, these amazing stories that reveal essential, extremely important information and knowledge. And so that's what needs to be heard through these other signs. You need to listen to the rest of this video. This is just an introduction. Like I am saying, it is through these interconnected signs that God is telling these stories and conveying this information and knowledge that needs to be known. In other words, make sure that you also watch the videos that are predicting the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash on February 10th. The analysis is 100% correct. If you have already watched this 8-minute clip explaining the prophetic signs that occurred on November 27th, please be patient. It is necessary that I explain what happened on November 27th and how it revealed adding an additional 9 + 9 + 9 days to get to the date it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash on December 24th. And if you have already watched this explanation for November 27th, you can skip ahead 8 minutes. After this 8-minute clip, I will get into the truly astounding information and subject of this particular video. This diagram that you are looking at here is truly profound, and there is a lot to explain. And God, through all of this, told very important and amazing stories that everyone needs to know. And this diagram and the full explanation for what happened and why it is relevant, what happened, the prophetic signs that occurred on November 27th, are explained in the 9/11 Mayor video. The video that is titled Trump Will Die, Prediction Trump Will Die on December 12th, Harris Will Crash on December 24th, equals the 9/11 Mayor, a man that God is using in his prophetic signs for very important symbolism, which points to the big warning of judgment on 9/11. Most importantly, that is the underlying symbolism, but there is so much that God has told through the 9/11 Mayor, which will be explained in the 9/11 Mayor video. But for the sake of continuity in this video, to explain the trail of signs, as I have just now explained, we have established a trail of signs that led to November 27th. November 27th is 9 + 9 + 9 days before December 24th, the date it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash. God pairs 9 and 11 together to confirm the signs and connections, and that is because it points to 9/11. And that's why we have this connection involving 9 and 11 and the 9/11 mayor. On this day, the 9/11 mayor stood outside of the courthouse that he is being persecuted in by his political enemies in New York City, in the 11th state. New York City, incidentally, is also made up of 11 letters. On 9/11, it was Flight 11 with a crew of 11 people that flew into the Twin Towers that looked like a giant 11 in New York State, the 11th state to join the Union, because Jesus coined the phrase the 11th hour, which in ancient Israel referred to the last hour of daylight before darkness, and in English is an idiom that means last chance. Time is running out. And so the prophetic sign that we expected in advance was Rudy Giuliani, the 9/11 mayor, announcing to the world in front of the press, in front of the courthouse, where he is being persecuted, that he no longer has a bank account. And this date, a primary reason why or how this date was known ahead of time was because of the connection to the Emergencies Act with the trucker freedom protest in Ottawa, which was about the restriction or restricting of the political dissidents' bank accounts. It was exactly 145 weeks in between these two signs involving bank accounts, because 145 is the 49th semi-prime number, and we are talking about the death of Kamala Harris, the 49th vice president. There's lots to say. The trucker protest was a convoy of trucks across the continent parallel to the border wall of security with America, the 49th parallel. 49 is 7 times 7. The trucker protest began exactly 7 times 7 years after 7 justices voted to legalize abortions in the Supreme Court, and Harris is most known for advocacy for abortions. To wrap things up here, this was Thanksgiving. This date was known ahead of time because it was the day before Thanksgiving. Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash the day before Christmas on her flight back from Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles. Again, God repeats a number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning, which is the reason for 9 plus 9 plus 9 days connected to this sign in New York. And it is relevant that it is in New York, because also it connects to the day that the New York State Bar removed Giuliani's law license in New York State. And also this date is exactly 211 weeks after this other 9/11 mayor sign, and on, and 211 hints at 2 times 110 stories of the Twin Towers that collapsed on 9/11. 211 is the 15th super prime number. Rudy Giuliani was sued for $150 million, which is why he doesn't have a bank account. And this date is predicted to be 15 days before it is predicted that Trump, who is from New York and Manhattan, also will die. This connection of 211 weeks, which I can't explain much more this end of the diagram in this video. It's explained in the Giuliani 9/11 mayor video, but this connection is also 404% of a calendar year. This 9/11 mayor sign was on the exact 400-year anniversary of the Pilgrims anchoring off Cape Cod and signing the Mayflower Compact, the predecessor to the Constitution. The sign on this date, this 9/11 mayor sign on the date 11/11, the Mayflower Compact was signed on the date 11/11, exactly 400 years earlier. This sign on this date was Giuliani's podcast, in which he, for the first time, laid out a comprehensive case of all of the evidence that the referendum had been shoplifted, which meant the end of democracy. This symbolized the beginning of democracy, and the end of democracy was symbolized with the 9/11 mayor and his case regarding the evidence on this day. And of course, the reason why Giuliani doesn't have a bank account and was sued this amount of money was for speaking the truth regarding the shoplifted referendum. And also, this 9/11 Mayor sign on this date was 404 years after the Pilgrims arrived, and the Pilgrims symbolized Thanksgiving, and again, this was the Thanksgiving sign that we expected in advance. 404 years and 404% of a calendar year hint at the 44th president, the Antichrist, who is symbolized by the king of Egypt in the Bible, and the Israelites escaped the persecution from the king of Egypt after 400 years in Egypt and then were led to the promised land. The Pilgrims saw their crossing of the Atlantic and their escape from the king of England and religious persecution, like the Israelites, as being analogous to the Israelites' departure from Egypt and crossing over the Jordan River into their promised land, their crossing of the Atlantic into the New World. The 44th president will become the Antichrist king after the death of Trump and Harris in a plane crash. And once he becomes the president and the Antichrist, he will restrict people's ability to buy and sell food based on their having taken or whether or not they have taken the mark of the Antichrist. In other words, bank accounts will be controlled, and this is why it is relevant that this coming death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash connects through these signs involving 9/11, which was about plane crashes, through the 9/11 mayor, and through the restriction of bank accounts of the left's political enemies, true conservatives and Christians. All right, this video was originally produced prior to October 17th, and the amazing signs, prophetic signs from God that occurred on October 17th confirmed all of the analysis here. It confirmed that this was in fact another step in the trail of signs that is leading to the date it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash on February 3rd. The amazing prophetic signs that occurred on this date are explained in the must-watch Gaza explosion video. And these signs include a prophetic Kamala Harris sign in her Air Force Two plane. And so going forward, all of the analysis that you see in this diagram is 100% correct. And this will be proven when Kamala Harris's plane will crash on the predicted date. One thing to add is that the sign, one of the major signs on that date, although it will be explained in more detail as to why it is prophetic in the Gaza explosion video, was the explosion at the hospital that killed 200 to 300 people in one of the 23 hospitals that serve 2.3 million people in Gaza. There's a reason for all of the 23 symbolism in all of that. But you will recall that was the big news of that day. And in any case, the whole matter, this whole Gaza Strip geography and the 2.3 trapped inside, it's all pointing to a coming genocide, which will begin on the same day that I am predicting the zombie pandemic will begin. In other words, this symbolic zombie pandemic, which will be a mass demonic possession, God is communicating that this must be, therefore, some type of Rwanda type of genocide that's coming in America. And the sign of the Gaza, the Hamas breaking through the border wall of security, it is also at the same time symbolism pointing back to America, but this will be explained in other videos and the Gaza explosion video. Also, this video will be talking about the 6th day of the first month incident in which a mob of people crashed through a security barrier, and that is what happened on October 7th in Israel when Hamas crashed the zombie-like demonically possessed terrorists crashed through the border wall of security, which is symbolism for the symbolic border wall of security that is currently being crashed and invaded by the zombie-like invasion from the south of the border in America. In other words, what I'm saying is it is all part of the same thing that God is communicating, and that is this coming genocide in America and invasion and mass demonic possession of a people that will be locked down and trapped, which is the symbolism, or was the symbolism, in the lockdowns of 2020. That was what God is communicating here. I'm not saying it'll be the same exact type of lockdown, but there will be a lockdown of those that refuse to take the mark of the Antichrist, the Christians that, for example, won't be demonically possessed, etc. This video explains some of the amazing and important prophetic signs that the righteous Christian God of the Bible used to point to October 17th, 2023, regarding the prediction that U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash. Here is the email and forensic notes document that indicate that the prediction for Harris's plane crash on October 17, 2023 was known since July 6, 2023. In fact, it has been known since October of 2020 that Harris will die in a plane crash so that Barack Obama can become the president again. God pointed to October 17th, ahead of October 17th. And so it was believed that Harris's predicted plane crash would be on October 17th. As explained in the Gaza explosion video, the extremely profound prophetic signs that occurred on October 17th, 10:17, revealed adding 3 sets of 7 days to reach November 7th, 11:7. The signs on 11:7 in turn revealed a trail of signs that continued on through other dates, and this trail of signs is predicted to ultimately end on February 2nd or 3rd, 2024. This trail of signs that I am referring to is explained in the must-watch Gaza explosion video. That said, October 17th was the bigger date. October 17th was supremely important, and the signs on 10:17 pointed to Zechariah chapter 1 verse 17 in the Bible. The Gaza explosion video explains how the signs on 10:17 pointed to Zechariah 1:17. Zechariah 1:17 was also hinted at with the date 11:7, which again was a prophetic 3 sets of 7 days after 10:17. Furthermore, from 11:7, the trail of signs regarding Harris's predicted plane crash continued on to the date 1:7, and this too was another hint at Zechariah 1:17. The reason why God used October 17th, the date 10:17, to point to Zechariah 1:17 is that this important prophecy in Zechariah chapter 1 in the Bible is dated, and the date of this prophecy is recorded in Zechariah chapter 1 verse 7, 1:7, and the date 10:17 also hints at this. The prophet Zechariah recorded the precise date on which he received the prophecy from God. The date was the 24th day of the month of Shavat in the Hebrew calendar. This year in 2024, the 24th day of Shavat begins at sunset on February 2nd and goes to sunset February 3rd. In other words, God used many different profound trails of signs to lead to October 17th, 2023, in order to point to the 24th day of the month of Shavat, which in 2024 begins on February 2nd. On February 2nd, Kamala Harris will visit South Carolina the 8th state to join the Union. To learn more about the very important prophetic relevance of Harris's visit to the 8th state, watch the important and must-watch Amelia Earhart prophecy video. 8 days after Harris will visit the 8th state will be February 10th, the date on which it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash, which will be the anniversary of the shoot-down of the Israeli F-16 fighter jet over northern Israel by Iran and Syria on February 10, 2018, which was the 24th day of the month of Shevat in 2018. To confirm his signs, patterns, and connections, God pairs the numbers 44 and 23 together, as the Antichrist is the 44th president and the basketball president who wore jersey 23 in high school. Barack Obama will become the president again as a result of the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash. 8 days from Harris's visit to the 8th state is the equivalent of 4 + 4 days, which hints at the number 44. February 10th will be exactly 2 times 3 years after the Israeli F-16 fighter jet was shot down, and 2 times 3 years hints at the number 23, and the F-16 hints at 4 times 4 and the number 44. Alright, now for the explanation for how this date in the Trail of Signs, February 10th, connects on in the Trail of Signs to the date it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash on November 27th, 2024. Watch either the Tina Turner video or the Mayflower Pilgrims video or the Warlock prophecy video. They're all the exact same video, each one of them, and one of them must be watched. It's a foundational video. But anyway, that'll explain how February, and it's important to know, of course, every minute of every video on this channel should be watched. I think the wise person will recognize when the prediction comes to pass. But anyway, that'll explain how February 10th gets us to November 27th. All right, one last thing before we get started with this amazing diagram and amazing video. I mentioned earlier at the beginning of this video that it is predicted, and it is labeled on the diagram as such, that the historic barge that has been stuck on the rocks of the Niagara River will crash, or would crash, over Niagara Falls on this date. This date is a few days ago, 3 days ago, and we received the prophetic sign that confirmed the analysis, and this was the NOAA solar flare. There was a NOAA solar flare on 4 + 4 days before this date, and 44 days after this date is the predicted catastrophic solar flare that will knock out the nation's power grid. It will be a destruction of fire. Peter said in the Bible that the coming destruction would be symbolized by fire instead of water, in contrast with Noah's flood. Noah's flood began on the 17th day of the 2nd month, which is the reason for this. This Niagara barge, in fact, is symbolism for Noah's flood. Niagara Falls, it engenders a perennial rainbow, and also the barge itself is symbolic of the ark. Now, instead of the barge going over the falls on this day, we received the NOAA solar flare prophetic sign. 4 + 4 days earlier, before this, which was February 9th, was the day that a sunspot had a massive flare. It was news, and it was from sunspot 3575, if I recall correctly. And that is the word for Noah in the Bible, in Strong's Concordance. 4 + 4 days later, we had a very rare solar flare on the sun. So the other one was the Noah flare, but this one was the rare flare. It was the 200,000 mile high flare at the South Pole, which is very rare. Usually they're around the equator and they're not that high, etc. You can read about it on spaceweather.com if you're interested, but I'll also make a video regarding this, actually. So anyway, the point is I'm just confirming for you that this was all valid. This connection right here, it's valid, okay? And then in turn it connects to the date it is predicted that the zombie pandemic and mass demonic possession will begin, and therefore this is valid too. All right, and regarding the barge, I haven't had time to confirm anything yet, but I suspect that it will crash over Niagara Falls 7 days before the predicted solar flare that will knock out the nation's power grid on April 1st, 2024. 7 days before that would be March 25th. And that would be because of the 7 days warning that God gave Noah to load the ark before the judgment destruction. And so that makes perfect sense. Although I have done zero to confirm that suspicion, I'm too busy with other things right now. All right, what you just heard, just the last minute or so, was recorded on February 20th. And indeed, I was completely correct. March 25th was, as I expected, a step. And the signs that are related to the barge, they're so amazing, you'll see, are explained in the Apocalypse Now video. Make sure you watch the Apocalypse Now prophecy video. The movie Apocalypse Now is actually a prophecy that God is using. Long story. It's amazing. You need to know what God is doing. But it involves the barge, and it was March 25th. So amazing. And April 1st, 7 days later, which was 44 days after this date, which is relevant because God uses the number 44 because of the 44th president, Antichrist. April 1st was the day of the 7 accidental deaths by the Israeli Defense Forces. 7 workers in the World Central Kitchen food aid organization in Gaza. You will recall this incident. That was that, and that is completely irrelevant too, because what God is communicating is that as a result of the coming solar flare, there will be, and which will knock out the power, there will be food shortages. And it's so amazing that's why we had this food aid assistance program, because the food is going to be rationed in a governmental way by the government, dictate, in other words, to only those who have taken the mark of the Antichrist. And so how appropriate was it that on this step in the trail that's leading to the date it is predicted that the solar flare will knock out the power grid, which will lead to food shortages, April 1st, we had this food shortage sign, which was again the World Central Kitchen incident in Gaza. 7 deaths. There's again 7 days, 7 days warning, right? Now, the date of the solar flare will be August 13th. Long story, it's explained in other videos. This date here, February 17th, is a step in that trail. It is amazing. Now, this video will talk about Franco Harris, one of the most famous football players in history for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and his the most famous football catch in football history, the Immaculate Reception. The name itself hints that it is a prophetic sign from God, a play on the Immaculate Conception. But this barge, when it got stuck in 1918, one of the 2 men that were stuck on it, his name was Frank Harris. Franco Harris, the player that caught the Immaculate Reception, is part of this documentary made by George Romero, the creator of the movie Night of the Living Dead, said to be the movie that began the genre of zombie movies. There were movies regarding zombies prior to George Romero's movie, but not like his. And he is said to be the the father of the modern zombie genre movie. He created this. He filmed. He is from Pittsburgh, and he captured the Immaculate Reception on film, which has been immortalized in history. And he made a documentary regarding it, and that's why he titled his documentary "Night of the Living Steelers." Okay, and I'll explain more of this too, but God has combined these two. He's rolled these together here, overlapped them to hint at the coming zombie pandemic. And so there's a lot to explain here. And I haven't decided where to begin. Why don't we begin with Franco Harris? Okay, so again, this is a hint at one of the two men. It's a hint at how Kamala Harris will die. This is the day, Franco Harris's death is right here in the trail, okay? So Franco Harris's death is important and hints at Kamala Harris's death in a plane crash. Okay, it'll be 9 months and 27 days after his death, which was on December 20th, 2022. All right, now 9 months and 27 days God uses because the passage in the most central prophecy in the Bible, Daniel chapter 9, verse 27, regards the period of the Antichrist, okay, and the end times period. And the Antichrist will become the president again after Kamala Harris's death in a plane crash. And that is why she will die in a plane crash. It is so she can be replaced by Michelle Obama, and then Joe Biden will step down, and Michelle Obama will then appoint Barack Obama as the vice president, and then she will step down, and Barack Obama will become the 48th president. And this passage, this last verse, the 27th verse of the 9th chapter of Daniel, regards the time of the Antichrist. So that's why we have the 9 months and 27 days between the death of Harris and the death of Harris, the predicted death of Harris, Kamala Harris, and Franco Harris. Okay, now, Franco Harris, his number, when he caught the Immaculate Reception, is 32, or was 32. 32 is prophetic for three different reasons here. One, it hints at 4 times 8 and the 48th president, who will become the president again after the death of a Harris, Kamala Harris. 2, it hints at a reflection and the number 23, which is the number that identifies Barack Obama, the basketball president who wore jersey number 23. And another reason why God uses the number 32 in his signs, and this isn't the only sports jersey number 32 for that matter, is because the name Obama in Simple English Gematria, which if you don't know what Gematria is, Roman, Greek, and Hebrew letters are also numbers, and as such, names and words can be converted into a numeric value. And in Simple English Gematria, A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3, the name Obama equals 32. Another reason why God uses 32 in association with Barack Obama, the Antichrist, is that the 32nd president was the only president to serve more than 2 terms. Just like how Barack Obama will serve more than 2 terms, he will serve a 3rd term after having served 2 terms, which is another reason for the 3 and the 2 in the number 32, but also the number 23, his basketball jersey number. But also, and very importantly, especially in context of what we are talking about, which is God's story that he's telling in this diagram through these signs of the coming zombie pandemic and what will be the cause of it. Because the number 32 hints at the 131st word in Strong's Greek New Testament Concordance, which is the word that means blood disease, which is what one gets when they take the thing, the mark of the Antichrist. The thing is the mark of the Antichrist. And you know what I'm talking about. The thing that you can't talk about is the mark of the Antichrist. And taking multiple things is leading to the zombie pandemic and mass demonic possession. That's the ultimate goal here of the things, the mark of the Antichrist. When people take the thing, they are kneeling symbolically to Satan, because it is a spiritual abomination. And if you don't know why, you need to learn some things. As the prophet Hosea said, "My people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. Because they reject knowledge, I reject them from being my priest." And if you don't know what the thing is and how it is a spiritual abomination, by this point in time, it is because you have rejected knowledge. And that includes whether you consider yourself to be a quote-unquote Christian. In general, the reason why quote-unquote Christians have not recognized this, many of them, is because they have in general not been engaged in the spiritual war that all Christians are in. And that is the only reason why they are alive, is to fight this war, this spiritual war that they are in. They have not been fighting it. They have been living worldly lives, basically or barely indistinguishable from other non-believers. They are interested in their careers and their families and their vacations, and they have this doctrine in order to support all of it, which is the doctrine that Jesus said he hates and is coming to make war on with the sword of his mouth, as he said in Revelation chapter 2, which tells them that they are once saved, always saved, etc., and they don't need to do anything, including be engaged in the spiritual war, which is the reason why they are alive and not in the kingdom. But also, the reason why they are alive is that their faith needs to be tested, which is the primary purpose of the end times and the Antichrist, to test the faith of quote-unquote Christians. Many Christians have this idea that the reason the end times and the Antichrist is to judge the world, and they're out of here. Well, no, not all Christians will be raptured. First of all, that's also a false doctrine. And second, they're not out of here because the whole point of life is to demonstrate their faith. They haven't actualized their faith. Many quote-unquote Christians haven't actualized their faith yet. And that needs to happen before they go into the kingdom. Otherwise, they've missed the whole point. God said something very, very interesting and very profound and important to Abraham. After he was called by God to sacrifice his only son, Isaac, God sent the angel and told Abraham to stop, do not harm the boy, for now I know that you fear me. In other words, he didn't know before then. That's amazing. Furthermore, Abraham didn't know until he demonstrated his faith. He was deemed righteous for believing in the promise. But then there's a second step to that, which is the actualizing of the faith. Because faith is a doing, not an intellectual agreement with something. Okay, so anyway, so the thing causes blood disease. That's the point here, and that's why Franco Harris's jersey number is 32, and why it connects with the Immaculate Reception and the death of Kamala Harris and the day that the barge will crash, because the barge is symbolism for the 50 to 100 million people that died in 1918 because of a you-know-what. Something that involves the country Spain. Didn't actually originate in Spain, if you didn't know. But that thing is the result, in fact, of things. The tests of the things that the Rockefeller Institute was doing at Fort Riley in Kansas to soldiers on their way to World War I. That is what is the cause of all of that in 1918, and the prediction being made in this video will prove this. And this is the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction, is just to prove the controversial things that I'm saying. And believe me, I know far better than you, whether you are a secular materialist, whether you are a New Ager, someone who says to themselves, I'm spiritual, quote unquote, spiritual and not religious, unquote. In other words, New Ager, or whether you are of another religion or whatever. The point is to prove to you that the true God is the Christian God of the Bible, who became a man, Jesus Christ, and died for our sin and was resurrected and conquered death through his resurrection and defeated Satan's power over us, which is death, which is why we die, or sin is why we die. The consequences of sin, the wages of sin is death. But Jesus defeated that and overcame sin and death through his resurrection. And we can now choose to follow Jesus and be with his Spirit through a repentance and baptism, if we choose to. Okay? So, all right. So, where was I now? So we're getting into why the connection to the Niagara Barge here. Why is Franco Harris connected to the Niagara Barge? Well, for one thing, the guy on the barge that got stuck was Franco Harris. The barge in 1918 was involved in the most dramatic rescue in the history of Niagara Falls. And the Niagara Falls is symbolism for Noah's flood. It symbolizes the power of water moving over the earth, and it engenders a perennial rainbow, God's sign regarding judgment in the account of the flood. And the rescue from the barge is a symbolism for Noah's Ark and the rescue of Noah and his family on the Ark. But more importantly, it also points to 1918, because the barge got stuck at the peak of the thing in 1918, the widespread thing that floats in the air and spreads, right? And that leads to the thing, because of course that's symbolism for the CVD disease, and that the solution for that for many people is the thing, which is leading to the zombie pandemic and the mass possession. Okay? Now, to establish all of this connection, God has done this trail of signs right here, and it is amazing. But first of all, Franco Harris coincidentally died almost exactly 50 years, and on the exact 50-year anniversary, there was a prophetic football game involving the Steelers. And there was a celebration for the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception, for which Franco Harris was supposed to have attended, but he didn't. He wasn't able to. He died just before it, and his wife attended. But anyway, 50 years is extremely prophetic in the Bible. It is a Jubilee cycle, and there is a lot regarding the Jubilee symbolism. But, so this is the reason for the 50 years. God uses many 50 years connections in his signs. Okay, and so, and by the way, I connected Franco Harris to George Romero, because Franco Harris is in this documentary, The Night of the Living Steelers. And the Antichrist, who is described in Daniel 9:27, or rather I should say, I shouldn't say that, because the first of the two Antichrists is Pope Francis, who is described in Daniel 9:27, literally in the passage. It says it's the Pope. Okay, it says that the ruler of the people who will come, that will destroy the city and the sanctuary, is the Antichrist later in Daniel 9:27. And the people that came and destroyed the city and the sanctuary, the Romans, and the descendant leaders of the Romans are popes, because the first pope was an emperor. Anyway, that's just one of many passages in the Bible that clearly identify the Pope as the Antichrist. And if you are a conservative Catholic, know that all popes throughout all of history have been antichrists, lowercase a, It all comes together in the end with the Antichrist. So if you're one that says, oh, Pope Francis is a bad guy, and you recognize that, no, my friend, God has been saying throughout all of history that Roman Catholicism is not a legitimate denomination of Christianity, and the office of papacy is apostate. And 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 tells us that first and foremost, the Antichrist will be apostate from his seat of power, and only then will he be political. But anyway, the second of the two Antichrists is the 44th president, and that's who will enforce the mark of the Antichrist and lead the world, the active younger one of the two Antichrists, because there's two described in Bible prophecy. And anyway, that's why 4 times 4 months exactly from the date that Harris died, Franco Harris, to the zombie pandemic, and that is because Franco Harris is in the movie Night of the Living Stealers, the documentary produced by the director who made Night of the Living Dead, the preeminent zombie movie. Okay, so now that's also interesting because we have this exact 44 years connection from Franco Harris making the Immaculate Reception, which, by the way, was a football play in a playoff game in which the ball bounced off, because Franco Harris was a defensive player. The ball bounced, no, he was an offensive player, the ball bounced off the defense, though, of the other team is what I meant. It bounced off the helmet of the Raiders player high into the air, and then just happened to come back down right where Franco Harris was, into his arms, and then he ran it into the touchdown, winning the game as time expired, which made it so dramatic, which is why it's the most famous play catch in football history, and why it's called the Immaculate Reception, okay? So anyway, it's exactly 44 years, and we also have this exact 4 times 4 months from Harris. So that's important. Now, why this 44 years? Because it gets us to this date here. It hints at the 44th president, who will be leading the UN in their effort to divide Israel and make Jerusalem an international city. And this was the day of UN Resolution 2334, which was orchestrated behind the scenes by the 44th president on his way out of office. Benjamin Netanyahu even said so at the time. It was a horrible thing for America to have done, but of course that's the case when you have the Antichrist leading America. That's what happens. And anyway, the most radical Marxist, leftist, which includes hating Israel because, well, ultimately Marxism is evil and from Satan, and it's all spiritual. But anyway, 2334 was the number of the resolution. It was the first resolution that in America abstained, and it was the first resolution that it was abstained from and passed that condemned Jewish settlements in East Jerusalem, which is the capital of Israel. And so anyway, it was a really bad resolution, and 2334 because 23 and 34 both identify Barack Obama. He again wore jersey 23 and will become the president again in 2023. And he entered politics at the age of 34, and also the 44th president grew up in Indonesia for 4 years, and Indonesia is made up of 34 provinces. The number 34 symbolizes Indonesia, as does the number 50 symbolize America with its 50 states, for example. Also, it all ultimately points to Isaiah chapter 34, which is the chapter in the Bible that regards judgment on the nations, which is why, for example, the Indian Ocean tsunami emanated from Indonesia, where there are 34 provinces, which killed many people in the many nations around the world, the Indian Ocean tsunami in 2004. So anyway, that's why 2334, and also the World Trade Center, 2 towers, 2 planes, equals 17 minutes apart, equals 2 times 17 equals 34. And the stock market on 9/11 was closed 34 points below the stock market closed the previous day. The World Trade Center, hence the judgment on the world in Isaiah chapter 34. Okay, and also that, by the way, is mark of the Antichrist symbolism because of the Tower of Babel. which is what is hinted at with the Flight 11 that flew into the Twin Towers that looked like a giant 11. Hints at Genesis chapter 11 and Tower of Babel story, which is transhumanism symbolism, transhumanism technology, which is what the thing is, the thing that is the mark of the Antichrist, the thing that you can't talk about. Now, this UN date, so when asked by his disciples for the signs to look for of his return, Jesus replied with the metaphor of birth pains, and the average human gestation period is 9 months. Furthermore, the number 9 is the most important number in God's true big picture of signs, as from the Bible, it symbolizes God's judgment. And this is how God's, so we have this 9 months connection to this, which was the Revelation chapter 12 sign, which depicted a birth. Hence the 9 months, which is amazing because this depicts a birth. This was the night that it was fulfilled in the night sky, the Revelation chapter 12, the prophetic sign that's described in Revelation chapter 12. And on the ground, this was the day that there was the emergency evacuation in the middle of the night. So the Revelation chapter 12 regards the rapture and the evacuation of God's faithful from the severe persecution from the Antichrist. And also in Matthew 25, this rapture is said to be at the midnight cry, hence the evacuation at midnight of 70,000 people in Puerto Rico, which is Spanish America, which hints at Spanish flu. But the reason for the evacuation was because of the damage done by Hurricane Maria. And Revelation chapter 12 describes a woman giving birth, and it was Mary that gave birth to Jesus in the Immaculate Conception, hence the connection to the Immaculate Conception to the Revelation chapter 12 sign. And God pairs 9 and 44 together to confirm signs and connections. Okay, and so anyway, also the damage was caused by the dam threatening to burst and flooding the 70,000 people. That's why the evacuation. But the evacuation was done in the middle of the night, knocking door to door because the power was out and the phone lines were down. And so this was a true midnight cry. It was a rapture symbolism sign here. Furthermore, it was on the night of the rapture sign, the Revelation chapter 12 sign. And it was 9 months to depicts a birth. The bursting of the threat of the dam bursting was symbolism for the woman's water breaking when she gives birth. Furthermore, just prior to pummeling Puerto Rico, Hurricane Maria was said by the media to have been dancing with Hurricane Joseph in the open Atlantic. Okay, and God pairs certain numbers together to confirm the signs and connections. And this is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, which is only being explained on this channel. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter, as the Bible says is required, and this is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination, and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic signs. And when we think about it, one simple way in which you would provide a second witness is through pairing certain numbers together, such as 9 and 44. And I know this because I have spent more than full-time hours from morning until night every day for 6 years studying God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections. This is an astounding connection. Furthermore, we have the Immaculate Conception play here to the rapture birth sign right here, all right? With also including 9 months. In the middle being Antichrist symbolism, hence the 44 years. Okay, so now God pairs 9 and 110 together to confirm the signs and connections. And what I'll do right here is just play a brief clip explaining why and how God pairs 9 and 110 together to confirm the signs and connections. All right, now that I've explained that, we can explain this. This is really amazing here because we have 2 sets of 9 months and 110 weeks connections here. Now, also 110 weeks is especially prophetic, if you will, because Joshua died at the age of 110. And Joshua led the Israelites around the walls of security of Jericho before they collapsed in God's judgment in a symbolic 3 sets of 7. And 110 weeks is actually 110 days times 7. So this is especially prophetic, if you will, for that reason too. All right. Again, I explained in the clip I just played that 110 stories collapsed, and so anyway, I explained all that and Wall Street and all that. So, So from Hurricane Maria, we have 110 weeks exactly to this Maria fire. So water Maria, fire Maria. The California fire, Maria fire, says, Cal Fire says that it burned 9,999 acres. Now you can verify that on Wikipedia. It isn't 10,000. It says right there, 9,999 acres. Well, it began on this date here. God uses firsts for his signs, the symbolic beginning of the burning of Maria fire. And so this 9,999 acres also confirms the 110 weeks, which is also confirmed with the 9 months. But it is also confirmed because it's Maria to Maria. So this is amazing, right? Which is the reason, again, because of the Revelation 12 birth woman sign, right? The woman that gave birth in Revelation chapter 12. Now, also, this was the day that the barge on the Niagara River moved for the first time since 1918. This was an extremely prophetic sign, and there's way more to this than is just explained in this diagram, as is the case with most everything that I explain in all of the videos, because it's an interconnected web, and it's infinite. When you try to explain one part of the web, you end up pulling the entire web, and you just can't do that. So anyway, things are limited, but the point is that each thing requires a second, third witness, which in turn requires second, third witnesses, which in turn require second, third witnesses, and it just goes off into infinity, which is just the same as the Bible. The Bible is not a linear document. It is an infinite connected web. That's why it cannot be understood through isolating passages like evangelicals try to do to support their Calvinism and free grace theology. They isolate the passages of Paul and ignore the other ones that disagree and contradict their passages, including passages that Paul wrote. But anyway, so we have a second witness with another 9 months and 110 weeks just in reverse here, because this was a sign involving Israel, and exactly 110 weeks later was the prophetic 70th de jure recognition by the U.S. of Israel. This is a legal term, de jure. So Israel was recognized, but then there was the de jure recognition, like the official legal recognition of Israel. And this was the 70th anniversary of it. And this pairs with this 70 right here, the 70,000 in the middle of this trail, the 70,000 that were evacuated. All right, now, what also makes this an Israel sign, which is amazing beyond words, is that the Dow on this day closed at 24,999.67, 30.33 points away from an even 25,000. The reason for 25,000 is because 25,000 is the main dimensional number mentioned 14 times in the book of Ezekiel regarding the rebuilt Messianic temple in which Jesus will rule for the 1,000 years of peace in Jerusalem, beginning after his second coming in October of 2024. And again, the prediction in this video will prove everything that I'm saying is true, and this is the reason why God has given me a voice through these predictions. It is to prove the controversial things. The second coming is in October of 2024, specifically October 12th, the Day of Atonement. Case closed. No more speculating for those that do. On the Daniel's 70th week, we are already well inside it. Case closed, end of debate, no more discussion. It's over. We are inside the final 70th seven, all right? So anyway, 25,000, that's what's hinted at here. But also, it's amazing because it's 67. And Israel recaptured the Temple Mount, where Jesus will rule from, in 1967. But this 999 is the purpose here, because it's for the purpose of confirming this 9 months and this 110 weeks connection. It's amazing. All right. Now, the date 131 hints at the 131st word in Strong's Greek New Testament Concordance, which is the word blood disease, which is what one gets when they take the thing. I mentioned that earlier, right? 32nd prime number. I mentioned that earlier, actually. Okay, so we have in turn another 110 weeks. We have this 110 weeks pair with this 9 months here, which connects with 110 weeks, but also this 110 weeks is followed by another exact 110 weeks. And it involves the Niagara River again. And Revelation chapter 12 again. Because this was the day that the woman drove her SUV from Goat Island, which is Antichrist symbolism, into the river and drowned. And the news stories only ever mentioned that her name, never mentioned her name, because they didn't have it. There was no identification of the woman in the news story. Even when they followed up on it months later, they still didn't know her name. She was only referred to as the woman or a woman, which is astounding because that's how the woman is referred to in Revelation chapter 12. A woman. That's it, simply, a woman. So this is a Revelation chapter 12 sign because also in Revelation chapter 12, the woman, after she gives birth, flees the dragon, hides from the dragon, and then the dragon attempts to drown her with a river of water, which is why this woman drowned in the river of water, the Niagara River, right near the edge of Niagara Falls. In fact, the date that her car finally went over 3 days later was also a prophetic sign, but that's another story. Because the car was stuck in the river for a few days, but she drowned. The Coast Guard came and rescued her with the helicopter, pulled her out of her vehicle, but she had already drowned. This is an astounding Revelation chapter 12 sign, and it connects again back to the Revelation chapter 12 sign through another Niagara sign. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention here. This barge moved because of a prophetic storm, which was 9/11 symbolism, which is more confirmation, as I explained, of the 9 and 110 connections here because of 9/11, as I explained. Well, anyway, this storm was 9/11 symbolism because it caused record flooding in eastern New York and western New England and caused one death, hinting at the one death of Kamala Harris here. But anyway, there was one death, which made it prophetically symbolic too. And the location of the flooding in eastern New York and western New England is where the flight paths of the two planes from New England flew over on their way to New York into the Twin Towers. Right, this is a prophetic, they called it the Halloween storm, knocked out all kinds of power. Ultimately, this is leading to the power outage as well. See, what I said earlier, this sign connects to many other things, right? But anyway, so it was a 9/11 storm as well. Okay, so, which is relevant in fact, because we have this 9/11 connection following the death of the woman here. It's a good thing that I remembered to talk about this right now, coincidentally, because we have this 1 year, 10 months, and 9 days connection from the day the woman drowned in the Niagara River, which hints at 9/11. Right? 2 1s and a 9 there. This is how God's signs works. And it's symbolic of 9/11. And to the date it is predicted, which is when 2 planes crashed into the towers. And it leads to the date it is predicted that Kamala Harris's plane will crash. Okay? Okay, now, the barge, as I mentioned earlier, is Noah's flood symbolism. And in the account of Noah's flood, the flood lasted for 5 months. Which is why we have this exact 5 months connection. It's amazing. To the date it is predicted that the barge will crash over Niagara Falls. And when it does, it will be the massive sign that the end times are, the really bad demonic end times will begin. Okay? The barge is like a wound up alarm clock ready to go off, is the metaphor I use. When it goes off, it's a sign of judgment because it hints at Noah's flood. And that's why this will be just 5 days, 120 hours, because 120 comes from Noah's flood as well. The account of the flood, 120 years before the destruction and the flood. It'll be 120 hours, 5 days before it is predicted that there will be a catastrophic solar storm that will knock out the nation's power grid. And Niagara Falls is known for its electricity that it powers. Oh, you know what I just realized? I didn't even realize this till now. The big story about the dramatic rescue of those that were stuck on the barge was that they shot a lifeline from the roof of the power, the what do they call that? The power building, the building that is where they generate the power, generated by the river. So Niagara Falls is like known for the power that it generates, and that's why this connects to the power outage 120 hours later. Wow. But anyway, that's why the 5 months, which furthermore connects with 5 days. Actually, I could have put that in this diagram actually, because I didn't even realize that until now. This 5 months is followed by 5 days, which is, in other words, is the second witness confirmation. The 5 months is the second witness to the 5 days. Wow. Wow. So, as I was saying, this video is about the zombie pandemic, and it connects to Franco Harris, who's connected to George Romero, the director of Night of the Living Dead. All right, and that's why from the crash of the barge, it is 2 months and 3 days, which ends at 23, which is also the equivalent of 9 weeks, which is a pairing of 9 and 23, which confirms the signs and connections. Right? God pairs 9 and 23 to confirm the signs and connections. The Antichrist became president in 2009, wore 23 in high school, and will become the president again in 2023. This is also the equivalent of 63 days, which hints at 3 6s, 666, the number of the Antichrist again. So we have 3 witnesses here to the relevance of this connection to this very Antichrist satanic prediction here, the beginning of the zombie pandemic and mass demonic possession from the day that the barge crashes. And again, the barge is symbolism for Spanish something that happened in 1918, right? As I mentioned earlier, that's the whole point. Why it happened in 1918 and why this barge moved for the first time. And by the way, the day that it moved was the symbolic date for the CVD disease. That was the day that was the day that the G5, just reverse that. Reverse G5 and you know what I'm talking about. Okay, reverse G5 and you get what I'm talking about. That was the day that the first city to have it, the city in China that begins with a Wu and ends with an N, you know that city, the origin of the disease. The G5 will be instrumental in the zombie pandemic. Okay? And so, yeah, there's so much. So this is a confirmation that the G5 will be instrumental, because this was the day, like I'm saying, that they first put the G5 in the first city, which happened to be the city where the CVD disease originated. If I'm not mistaken, this was also the time of the military games in that city, which is also where they first started spreading the disease. Okay, so, all right, so we've done the bottom half of this diagram now. There's more though, because the date that is predicted Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash is 1 year, 9 months, and 11 days, which is 9/11 symbolism, after Kamala Harris said famously or infamously that the event on this date here, the date that happened in the first month, on the 6th of the month, in you know what year, which was the year before, in case you're not watching the video and just listening to it. The year before, okay, so I'm not going to say the date. You know the date I'm talking about, the date that you shouldn't really say, right? The first of the month, the 6th day of the month. Okay, the big event at the Capitol building, right? She said on this date, exactly 1 year later, that that event was the equivalent of 9/11. She compared it to 9/11. All right, and that's why from this horrific thing that she said, it is 1 year and 9 months and 11 days to her death, which is 9/11 symbolism, and that is amazing. Furthermore, from this horrific thing that she said, and by the way, the towers on 9/11 are also symbolic of the thing because they were replaced by the One World Tower. And if you look at it properly, it looks like a giant thing that is used to put the thing in people. Right? You know what I'm talking about. Furthermore, the two towers are symbolic of the two arms of a chromosome, and the thing changes chromosomes. And that's why the smaller of the two chromosomes, the two arms, is in science terminology is called the petite arm, for French for small, and that's why Philip Petit walked across the evaded security and walked across the Twin Towers exactly 70 weeks after they officially first opened. The most central prophecy in the Bible is the 70 weeks prophecy, and it regards the timing of Christ, and his walk across the tightrope with a balancing pole with a man at the center symbolizes the cross. And when the towers collapsed, there was the 20-foot steel beam cross in the debris field standing upright, perfectly proportioned. And anyway, okay, so the point is that the towers, 9/11, is also symbolic of the thing. Okay, and so that's why we have this connection as well. But we connect it from this day that she said that this date was like 9/11. And by the way, the date hints at 1/6, which hints at 16, and which hints at 4 times 4, the 44th president, Antichrist. And the 44th president will be the 48th president, and that's why from this thing, the day that she talked about that date, which hints at 44, like I just explained, it is exactly 2 times 2 times 300 days to the zombie pandemic. And 2 times 2 times 300 hints at 223, which is the 48th prime number. Okay? So that's why we have that connection right there too. It's exactly 1200 days. Now, the 44th president will be the Antichrist, and it connects with this 48 symbolism here, but this date also connects with exactly 4 plus 4 plus 4 months after the actual date. The date on which the event happened at the Capitol building, in which a mob of people that were zombie-like crashed through the barrier of security, which is reminiscent of a zombie movie. Think about it. That's what's being symbolized there. The mob of zombie-like people crashing through the barriers, slowly even. They moved slowly, just like zombies. They were zombie-like. They're just walking slowly into the, and the barriers came down really easily too, because we all know why, right? And you know why. I just can't talk about it. But anyway, it was very zombie-like. And it was a mob. And they crashed through the security barrier, which is exactly a zombie movie. It's amazing. Now, the thing is that I'm saying the zombies will be because of taking the thing, and the thing is symbolized by the number 22. The mark of the Antichrist is symbolized by the number 22. Hence, we have this 222 weeks connection to the day of the release of the new documentary, Night of the Living Steelers, made by George Romero about the Immaculate Conception. But he used the title as a play on his most famous movie, The Night of the Living Dead. And the reason 22 is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist, which is what creates zombies, or will create zombies, is that the inverse of the mark of the Antichrist is described in Ezekiel in the Bible, and it would have been a Tav mark, and the Tav letter is the last letter in the Hebrew alphabet and the 22nd letter, and the mark of the Antichrist is described in the last book of the Bible, the book of Revelation, which is the 22nd book out of 22 books in the Bible that have a total of 22 chapters. And this is why we have this exact 222 weeks connection from the creator of the Night of the Living Dead zombie movie to the mob of zombie-like people crashing the security barrier at the Capitol building. On the date that hints at 44, exactly 4 plus 4 plus 4 months after Kamala Harris said that the date was like 9/11, which connects with a 9/11 to her crash, but also with a number that symbolizes the 48th president, the Antichrist, to the date of the beginning of the zombie pandemic and mass demonic possession. It is amazing. And now we have come to the climax to this epic, most amazing, beyond words video and information, which is this connection from the Night of the Living Dead and its connection to the 6th day of the first month in the year that ends with 21. And the breaking or crashing through the security barrier in a zombie-like fashion. And is symbolic of a zombie crash, as in what was depicted in the movie The Night of the Living Dead. This event was the biggest event in US history. It is by far bigger than 9/11 in terms of how it has affected the nation. And for that matter, also, the US government has devoted far more time into this investigation. The intelligence agency that begins with an F and ends with an I has devoted way more time to this than anything else in history. And the implications of what is still coming from this is also why I say this event was bigger than 9/11. But anyway, this event, this 6th day of the first month event, is for the purpose. It is the spirit of Antichrist that is behind this, and the left. The secular leftist ideology, blue team, civil war, tribalism, etc., that is behind what is going on here. Its purpose, it's everything is spiritual, and ultimately it is rooted in the spirit of Antichrist. And it is being used to persecute patriots and to persecute people that love America. I'm using my words carefully here for a reason. You know, a word that begins with a P and ends with a T. You know, P-A-T, right? Pats. And it's to persecute Pats and Christians, their arch enemy. And they have been labeled as, and I'm going to use my words carefully, Dom-ic terrors. So the movie Night of the Living Dead is a terror movie, right? And if you add an ism to that and precede that with a word that it begins with dom, you know, and dom-ic terror, right? You know what I mean now. So this is being used to label their arch enemy as this, the Dom terror isms. You know what I mean, right? And that is why we have this stunning beyond words connection here, which is 1,153 days. This confirms everything. This is one of the most amazing connections I have ever seen, and I have seen a lot of connections in God's big picture of science over the last 6 years, 7 years, or whatever. But this takes the cake, because this is what's happening. This is what's predicted to happen. This is what was speculated to be the case years ago, when I first learned back in 2020 that there is going to be a bomb explosion in New York City. But the speculation has been that it will be used in some way to blame Dom terrors, isms, Pats, to further their persecution of Pats and Christians. Exactly like how the 6th day of the first month is being used and propagandized. Okay, so somehow this event that's being predicted with the bomb in New York City on the same day that Kamala Harris is predicted to die in a plane crash, somehow this event will be used to persecute the enemy of the Antichrist, the spirit of Antichrist that is behind the left, Pats and Christians. And somehow, anyway, this will be used in the same manner that the 6th day of the first month is being used. Okay, so I don't know what's going to happen, but somehow it'll be a lie, and it could even be staged. It could even be planned. It could even be orchestrated. I wouldn't surprise that people call this sort of thing a false flag. It could even be such an event. It could even be, in other words, a conspiracy to, in other words, it could even be that it will be known that this is about to happen and they're not going to do anything about it, or they're aiding it. I don't know. But what I do know is that it will be used in the same manner against the enemy of Christ. Sorry, the enemy of Christ will use this to persecute Christ's people. Okay, hopefully I've made that clear. Now the reason why 1,153 days is beyond amazing. Sorry, 1,123 days. Is that it is the 188th prime number, and God uses frequently in his big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel, the number 188, because the 188th word in Strong's Hebrew Old Testament Concordance is the word woe! Which is used in context of extreme judgment from God. And what more perfect connection can you expect than this woe connection? Because the 6th day of the first month was a massive woe, and still is an ongoing woe. If you've been following what is still ongoing regarding what has happened since then, even regarding this, and how it is being used, like I'm saying, in the Civil War, and the coup, the totalitarian left coup that is underway. That's what's really going on. And this is a woe, because this event here will be a woe, and God has connected these two with this woe. This date is a woe. February 3rd, 2024 will be a woe date. Not only will Harris die, which is the reason for Franco Harris again in this connection, and as a result, the Antichrist, whose name equals 32, and Franco Harris's jersey number is 32, will replace Kamala Harris after Michelle Obama replaces her. Okay, so not only will the Antichrist come to power through the death of Kamala Harris, that's a woe, but also this event here will be used to persecute Pats and Christians, just like the 6th day of the first month. In fact, no doubt, the 6th day of the first month will be simply a warm-up for them compared to what is going to happen here. And that's the reason for the woe connection. And speaking of January 6th being in the League of 9/11, of course it wasn't really. The left is making it out to be, and so because of that, it is more consequential than 9/11. But speaking of 9/11 and woe, 9/11 in 2001 was exactly 188 years after the only other time in history a foreign enemy attacked the nation's capital. Right? Because on 9/11, Flight 77 flew into the Pentagon. The only other time a foreign enemy attacked the nation's capital was in 1813, when on 9/11, the British landed at Washington's Mount Vernon estate which is in itself prophetic, and then proceeded to burn down the White House and the Capitol building. And speaking of Washington, that was when Dolly Madison rescued his portrait from the White House before it burned down. And then the British on the same day were chased out of Washington, D.C. by a hurricane, which was of course designed by God. So that was a 188 years exact connection. And Kamala Harris is predicted to die in St. Louis. Her plane is predicted to crash in St. Louis because it will point to the eclipse that's coming on April 8th, which will engender an X across the nation, which is symbolic of the mark, which is the thing that turns people or will turn people into zombies, right? And the X symbolizes the mark of the Antichrist because of the Tav letter in the Hebrew alphabet, as I explained earlier, I'm sure, because I must have explained it because we have the 222 weeks connection here, and 22 symbolizes the mark of the Antichrist, because of the Tav mark being the 22nd letter in the Hebrew alphabet, and the book of Revelation being the 22nd book out of 22 books in the Bible that have a total of 22 chapters. Okay, so this date here, one reason why it will be this date for these events, is that the date 2-3 hints at 23, the number of the Antichrist, the basketball president who wore jersey number 23 in high school, and the 23rd semi-prime number, which is a number only divisible by two other prime numbers, and as I'm explaining here, God uses prime numbers in his signs because this is the 188th prime number. The 23rd semi-prime number is 65, and 65 days later will be the eclipse. And the eclipse on April 8th, that will engender an X near where Kamala Harris will have crashed, will be 188 days before the second coming, the day of the Lord, of Lord Jesus Christ and his return on October 12th, 2024, the Day of Atonement in the Hebrew calendar. And that is an astounding connection. That connection was known years ago, and years ago it was known that this was a solid confirmation that the second coming would be in 2024. But make no mistake, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove this. It is to prove that the second coming is on October 12th, 2024. End of debate. No more discussion about that, because that is the purpose of this prediction. Believe me, I know far better than you the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction. And it is to prove what I just said. So that's amazing, because this connects with, again, the 23rd semi-prime number to the eclipse, which connects with 188 days to the second coming. And this date is preceded by this 188th prime number connection, as I just explained. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. In the last days, many people who claim to be a follower of Christ will have spiritual experiences that are in reality demonic. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, TrumpPrediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the BitChute.com or the Odyssey.com channel, and do it now in case you aren't able to later. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived, and more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. In the last days, many people who claim to be a follower of Christ will have spiritual experiences that are in reality demonic. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, TrumpPrediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, Please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the bitchute.com or the odyssey.com channel. And do it now in case you aren't able to later.